It's 1991. A painter by the name of Bryan Charnley is working on his final piece in his self-portrait series, an image that feels raw, chaotic, and seemingly unfinished. 2 months after completing it, he would tragically take his own life after a long battle with mental health issues and schizophrenia. In this video, I will talk about who Bryan Charnley was, and I will react to his famous self-portrait series. Bryan John Charnley was a British painter born in 1949. After a nervous breakdown at 18, he was later diagnosed with acute schizophrenia, which deeply influenced his life and art. Though he studied at a prestigious art school, his illness often interrupted his education and career. From 1971 till 1977, he would stop painting as he underwent electroconvulsive therapy. In the late 70s, he began painting again, starting with representational works before turning to pieces that explored his inner world and mental state. From 1982 onward, his art delved into the reality of living with schizophrenia. It was during this period of time that perhaps Bryan was the most hopeful he has ever been, as he was meeting a woman by the name of Pam. Pam is depicted in multiple of Charnley's works at the time, most notably the painting named Pam and I, which is a painting professing his love to her. Pam helped him through a lot of mental battles and even hospitalization. However, the relationship was not rock solid, as they often fought, and she was also facing her own mental illness. In 1987, it would turn so bad that Pam attempted to take her own life by jumping out the window. Pam miraculously survived the jump. However, she suffered lifelong damages from the fall. Charnley would depict this scene in his painting Leaving by the Window, which by the way is an insane name to have, but I digress. The description mentions Charnley's inability to commit to the relationship, and the two birds fighting, symbolizing exactly that, Pam and Bryan's relationship together. Obviously, this relationship was never given a second chance after her attempt, which resulted in her jumping out through the window. This would leave him in a broken state up until his eventual death actually. It also gives us much more context into his mind state and life circumstances when he later paints his self-portrait series. Throughout me reacting to his self-portrait series, it's important to note that I want to read his own notes word for word. Because, let's be honest, ain't nobody watching 15 minutes of doing that. Instead, I'm gonna go through it, summarize it, and make my own interpretation as well. I will link his website below, which contains his notes, so you can read for greater insight into some of these art pieces. So right off the bat, it's kind of interesting. He starts off by mentioning his drug dosage. Actually, this is one of the few paintings which in this whole series look quote-unquote normal. And he mentions using a drug called the Pixel, which is, through my research, is an antipsychotic drug. And basically says he upped the dosage. This painting is similar to the last one in the sense that it includes himself, but he has changed the environment completely. I think it's a very creative way of expressing the effects of drug usage. He mentions being paranoid, and that feeling is conveyed in the painting through the massive ears specifically. I think what makes this painting creepy is knowing the backstory, of especially reading his notes, which I really recommend. This is also the last time we would see his face, quote unquote, normally. What the fuck is this? Nah, I'm kidding. But actually, I tried to make a UK accent, didn't work. Anyways, when I first saw this painting, I had to make sure that it was part of the same collection. And reason being is that he's really changed his style like immensely, and here we only see the shape of what I assume used to be the placement of his head. I actually like the painting, but this wouldn't really attract the average Joe in the street. Like showing this painting, they'd be like, well, what are you even showing me? And Bryan attributes the crossed out dates in the middle as becoming obsessed that he had taken 2 sittings rather than 1 on the first self-portrait. I think it's amazing, like visually, and also it carries like a personal message. And I think that's a lot what art is, very personal, and I think that's a great homage. Up until this painting, he has mentioned attempting to up his dosage of the pixel and then later now reduce it. I mentioned this only to say if you read his actual notes, you will see he goes back and forth with himself, like changing the dosage, kind of a little bit fighting either the addiction or my theory is that he can't figure out if he feels better staying medicated or not. But you see that when you read his notes. Another thing is he's taking the pixel, and I did some research. The doctors definitely knew what Bryan was on, because this drug is assistance against self-harm. So you give it to people who you think, might do some self-harm. And if you view the painting and think it resembles a person, then you're right. It's an abstract painting of himself, hence the pipe, because he smokes a lot. One of the most disturbing elements of this painting that really can't go overlooked is the spots on the brain. And the reason for that is those darker spots are actually blood. They're dried blood. And the story goes that he himself actually mentioned this in his notes. He says he stabbed his thumb, and he doesn't mention how come it perfectly falls into, well, the painting, and the head looks like the brain of the person. But yeah, that's real blood. So really disturbing element right there. This is the fifth painting, and in my opinion is a very well made with a lot of different colors. While many would talk about some of the practical elements in the painting like the nose and the eyes, I want to talk about something else, which actually is the perspective the painting is drawn. I think the perspective more than anything is what makes this painting really stand out. At the bottom, you see a wooden floor, which makes me believe we're looking at some kind of graffiti wall. At least that's the perspective that the painting is giving. Something I previously mentioned was also Bryan's constant fight with himself on trying to figure out whether or not what he's doing is correct. So for instance, in the last painting he featured a pipe, but in this one he seems to condemn smoking, painting a cross over the cigarette. Another topic is the medication, right? He goes from painting to painting in his own notes, describing that he is either upping his dosage of medication or decreasing it. Not really sure whether he should have more or less. Lastly, the element I want to highlight here are some simple words that he's written. Love is strange and I've broke her. Alright, painting number 6. This is one of my lesser favorite paintings from the collection. Every element here is disconnected with reoccurring features such as eyes, nose, and cigarettes. Bryan just purely seems to share what's on his mind. There isn't really much to say about this painting. Let's go, Bryan! That's what I'm fucking talking about. I really like this painting. This painting number 7, and I think the message is very clear. He's a target of sorts. The colors are interesting, and the idea is very creative, drawing inspiration from some, I don't know, bow and arrow sports, and obviously has made his head the bullseye. And this painting, generally the whole series has this narrative of painting himself as the victim in different ways and circumstances. This painting is a direct way of showing that, and obviously the bullseye being in his face is a very simple concept to understand. The first notable thing with this painting is someone is missing a leg. The leg is in old gladiator Roman style, which resembles dominance. This might be Bryan's way of saying up to this point that he has been losing control of his life to his mental health and drug circumstances. Fucking get the leg back, yo! Who's missing that leg? First thing you notice is the two separating elements in the painting. You have the mouth and the lower part containing the eyes. It's not random that the mouth is drawn at the place which would normally contain the head or brain of a person. Charnley must have had a lot of going on in terms of people telling him what to do and think, hence the mouth being open in almost a disgusting manner. Here we see a similar style used to the last one, where the mouth is on the head. The window acts as a transmitter of sense, as we can see clear effects coming from it, and reaching his head and ear. The painting is dominated by blue color, which can resemble isolation or subconsciousness according to ChatGPT. Really interesting painting, which is giving me some horror movie vibes. I really like it. The main part you can see in this painting is a broken heart, but not in the normal way you would expect. It is infected with spider legs. Reading his notes, he mentions about feeling a lot more schizophrenic and changing his medicine dosage. In this case, he's cutting it down. My theory is that the broken heart must have something to do with his ex-girlfriend, Pam, who tried to, I don't know how to say this, but unalive herself. I say that for monetized reasons. And I don't even get monetized, but she tried to unalive herself. And I think that's the inspiration for this one. Here we see the spider legs again. And if you look at the middle part, it kind of looks like a robotic face, which reminds me of Geometric Dash. One thing I noticed with Bryan Charnley is that once he uses an element in a painting, he sticks with it for his next few ones. An example is previously with the mouth, and now he does the same with the spider legs. An interesting theory as to why he could be reusing same elements is perhaps he's trying to best his last painting, or create different versions that reflect the same mood. In this case, the similar to the last painting is reflected in a sort of infected soul, as that's the heart of the topic in the painting. This is one of my favorite paintings from the collection. It radiates emotional agony, but what's really striking is how softly that pain is delivered, through a palette dominated by light blue and green. The contrast between subject and color gives the whole piece a quiet and haunting tension. There's an incredible amount of detail and symbolism, almost like visual Easter eggs. Most notably, the crows in the painting are a direct reference to Van Gogh's Wheatfield with Crows. Bryan was experiencing a similar mental state when he painted this. He's even said in the notes that he wasn't feeling motivated to continue living, echoing Van Gogh's final days. The sky filled with disembodied mouths is a powerful metaphor. Everyone's opinion are polluting the air, closing in, and leaving no space to breathe. You can feel the claustrophobia, not physical, but psychological. And in this painting, it's overwhelming. This is crazy, yo! Someone close the fucking door! Yo, POV guys, I'ma break it down. You open the door and it's your anxiety waiting. And you're an anxiety waiting with a cigarette. What else is there to say? The door is open, ladies and gentlemen, which is not a good sign if you want to protect yourself from the outside world. Painting 15. Honestly, I don't even know where to begin with this painting. Maybe not with the painting then. Because if you read Bryan Charnley's notes, this is the first time you get a clear image of his mentality. Even though he has presented himself as the victim in most of the portraits, he has some kind of self-entitlement because of his contribution. And I'ma explain. In his notes, he writes exactly this. And I'ma quote it. I intend to record my progress with more self-portraits to add up, when they're all joined together as an important document as to life at the end of the 20th century. Self-portrait will state with depth what it is to be a human and schizophrenic. So that is what he's writing in his notes. And to me, I feel like at this point it's almost like he has no motivation, but he's doing it for the audience because he feels that his work is that important. Painting 16. The last two paintings with this one and the last one are left without any notes. However, we're gonna do what we usually do, which is breaking it down. Firstly, I gotta say what a wonderful painting. This is actually my favorite from the whole series. Okay, back to the painting. Firstly, we can see the text near the center, which if you zoom in clearly spells out the cards are no good that I'm holding unless they are from another world. So this is a song by Bob Dylan named Series of Dreams, which he basically says this very thing, but instead of using I, which Charnley paints, says you in the actual song. The obvious sentiment here is that it's fucked. I mean, there are enemies everywhere, he isn't being understood, doctors pushing medicine, and his mental health clearly declined, meaning all of this, his cards, his circumstances are no good, no bueno. It's interesting that the two things that are spiked are the quotes by Bob Dylan and past, clearly to assume he wishes to go back to another time, as this time has caused him a lot of pain. Alright guys, so this is the last painting. After this one, unfortunately, Bryan did pass away. And just to explain a little bit about the painting, so there are two theories behind it, which is either that it's unfinished or that this is exactly the finished version and what he wanted to showcase. So the theories about it being unfinished is because looking at it, you're not really seeing much. No clear themes, no clear concepts. And the reason for it potentially to be finished is because it's dated, which is tradition for artists to do with their paintings when they are finished. Red and yellow has been predominantly the color throughout this series, showcasing mental anguish. In one way, I believe it's finished because he has really summarized the whole series in a sense with this painting. It's simple, yet it says a lot. And in this case, he has had so many paintings up until this point that there isn't really much else for him to say. That being said, there isn't really much to add. I just wanted to celebrate this great artist's legacy and hope you guys enjoyed. Take care.